Hopeful Beginnings is a 501c3 dedicated to perinatal mental health and adoption services. We believe in empowering women and families to build nurturing homes for children. The Hopeful Beginnings podcast tells the stories of pregnancy, birth, and parenthood through the eyes of professionals who serve families in our Chicagoland community. Find out more at hopefulbeginning.org. All right. Welcome, everyone, to the Hopeful Beginnings podcast. I am so lucky today to be sharing some time and some conversation with two of our Hopeful Beginnings social workers. I have Julia, who is a licensed clinical social worker with our adoption program, and Allyson. How long have you been with the agency?
11 years.
11 years. That's a long time. So I guess really to start out this conversation today for both you and Julia, why adoption? It's such a niche field of social work. How did you get interested in adoption, or where did that journey start for each of you?
Do you want me to go first?
Sure.
So I always knew I wanted to work in the child welfare field in some capacity, and honestly, adoption and working with birth parents wasn't specifically something on my mind, but when I started at the agency right after I graduated with my master's degree, I quickly fell in love with the work and working with both sides, the adoptive side and the birth parent side. It's hard work. It's a lot. But it's beautiful seeing those connections and really feeling like you're impacting the lives of, again, not only the adoptive parents, but the birth parents as well, and the child.
Yeah. And what about you, Julia?
Yeah, I think a similar kind of story. I didn't really know that I was going to be a social worker until later in my undergraduate. And then when I knew social work was the path I was going to go, adoption was kind of the first thing that I knew I wanted to do. And then when I actually interviewed to be an intern at the agency, I thought I was interning to be an adoption intern. Mm-hmm. And I was kind of like told in the interview that wasn't what I was doing. And I kind of just really tried anything I had to do to get there, because I knew that that's what I wanted to do. And, after I think 2 years, I was able to be a part of the adoption program and fell in love pretty instantaneously. I think working with birth parents and being able to meet them where they're at and give them an opportunity that not a lot of people know a lot about was something I took a lot of pride in. And working with adoptive parents who at this point have probably gone through a lot of different avenues to become parents. And if they finally came to adoption, I just wanted to kind of support them in whatever path that I could.
That's so beautiful. I know you both personally so well, and you guys just have such caring hearts. And I think our program is, so much stronger to have, workers like you. And I want to kind of backtrack a little bit. So when we talk about adoption, us that have learned, right, to work in this field, we use a lot of different terms. Something I heard you guys both say is birth parents. Can you kind of define what does that mean for an adoptive situation? Like, what is a birth parent and why do we use that phrasing?
Sure. A birth parent is someone that has given birth and chosen to place their child with a family that will raise them for the rest of their life. They have terminated their parental rights, but they are still a parent. Mm-hmm. They, we don't like to use the term real parent. I don't really know what that is, but they are a person that gave birth. They are a birth parent, and we kind of differentiate that between the parents that have raised that same child as adoptive parents.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think there's just so many misconceptions and so many different terms throughout like the adoption history in this country. So I really want to make sure, the lives that we're able to touch are really understanding, like when we say birth parent, it is, a very conscious effort to say that.
Yeah.
So I came to this work in Hopeful Beginnings. It's been 4 years now, which I can't believe.
Wow.
Really not knowing anything about domestic infant adoption. I had worked a little bit with DCFS touches, but not knowing all these terms. Can you share when you're doing consults with individuals who are looking at as an adoption as a choice for their family, what are some common misconceptions that you hear about adoption right now?
A big one that comes to mind is that children being placed for adoption, which you talked about, like verbiage and the language. The adoption community really is trying to get away from using the phrase give up for adoption, give your child up for adoption. So you'll hear us say place for adoption because the connotation that comes alongside giving your child up for adoption is super negative. And it's the last thing that a birth parent is doing is giving away or giving up on their child. So sorry, that's just a little side note. But
no, I think that's really what we want to talk about something today, because I still hear that from many people. Oh, you work with moms who are troubled or don't want their children, which is probably the opposite of true.
Absolutely.
In what I've seen.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Women and men and, couples are making a conscious decision saying, I cannot give my child all that they need, so I'm going to choose another family to raise my child. Mm-hmm. And that is literally the hardest thing a parent can do. Mm-hmm. And again, just talking about language and how powerful it is. And, I really think when we use phrases like you're giving away your baby, that just reinforces to couples or parents that what they're doing is shameful or bad, when again, what they're doing is heroic and brave and incredibly hard and filled with loss.
Very selfless.
Right.
Not selfish.
Right.
A lot of people, I think, oh, you're placing your baby. You're so selfish. You can't take care of them. No, I am the opposite. I am selfless. I'm doing the hardest thing I probably will ever have to do in my life. And, we have tremendous, strength for these women. They are the strongest women that I think we work with. Absolutely. And it takes a lot of courage to do that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And just going back to misconceptions, when working with couples interested in learning about adopting a child, I think a big one over the years is just the misconception of who is placing their child for adoption.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thinking it's the only ones that are placing are teenagers. While yes, that happens, statistics, numbers across the country show that women and couples who are choosing adoption for their baby are in their 20s and 30s. Most of the time they're parenting other children and they know how hard it is financially, emotionally, physically. So they're really making that brave decision to consider another option. So I think that's a big one, having to just really educate people, that it's not all 15-year-olds who are placing for adoption.
Yeah,
Not saying that never happens, but I just think that's a huge misconception. And that, like you kind of touched on, that birth parents or women and couples considering adoption are troubled or have always
struggling with addiction.
Right, which again, does that happen? Of course. It happens with people raising their children too. Right. But it's not always the case.
Yeah, it's definitely not the norm, I don't think.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that was super surprising to me, because that is that typical teen pregnancy narrative. And even I know, like, when we're out in the community and we're talking about Hopeful Beginnings, the assumption is, oh, you have a teen parenting program because you want to, talk about adoption with the teens when you ran the teen parenting program, Julia.
Yeah.
Can you just talk about the difference in perspective there?
Yeah, I mean, I think we have to go back to developmental. Where are your typical 15, 16, 17-year-olds developmentally? They are not to bash them, but they are very about themselves.
As they should be, right?
Right, as they should be. And, as we just kind of explained, adoption is a very selfless thing. You have to put the needs above yourself for your child and in a different way. And it's just not where they're at developmentally. And I think that that's a huge factor as to why adoption is not very common in teens. I think another huge thing is most likely they still live at home. So that support, that kind of village that it takes to raise a child is there for right now for them. For our other moms that are considering adoption at 30, 35 years old, maybe they don't have that same village.
Right.
So it just looks very different when you have no support.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And then I know, Julia, you really are one of the first touch points for couples and individuals who are looking to adopt a child coming through our agency.
Yeah.
Can you talk about what does that process look like, but also what can people expect, when they are choosing to adopt a child? Because I hear two frequent misconceptions that one, they're going to come into it saying, I want a child because there's so many kids that don't have homes. Or two, I am coming to adoption because it's easier than infertility and the IVF. Can you kind of address those two scenarios?
Yeah. Fertility treatments and adoption are both very emotional.
Yeah.
And they're very time consuming as individual parts. And to go through both of those things at the same time, I think can be very overwhelming. But in itself, they're very emotional. And then just in terms of process, I think, when typically people that are coming to adoption have tried some aspect of trying to conceive themselves, whether that be without medical intervention or they've moved on with medical intervention. And it just wasn't successful, unfortunately. So they start researching adoption. They kind of fall onto our agency, which we love. And then just educating them that this is a lifelong journey that they are on. This just doesn't stop when you're placed with this baby. This is a lifelong commitment of educating themselves on talking to, their child. How you tell and talk about adoption to a 3-year-old is very different than how you talk to a 13-year-old. They're going to have way different questions. So this is something that they sign up for long term, but we provide education for that. We want to set them up to be the best adoptive parents that they can.
And we have a new program for that.
Yeah, we do.
We're so excited. Yeah, we now at Hopeful Beginnings have adoption mental health services for families, for adoptees, which I think is huge because, like you said, it's such a lifelong issue. Like, you have individuals contacting the agency who were adopted looking for their birth parents, or who just need that support because it is a journey, right? Which is incredible. And then can you kind of address that other perspective of there's lots of babies without homes or lots of children?
Yes, I think there will always be more parents wanting to adopt than there will be babies because of the type of adoption that we do. We do domestic infant adoption. So that is a voluntary adoption that these birth parents are choosing at birth, most likely. And there just is not a lot, because it's voluntary, there just will never be enough babies or more babies to where we have, orphanages are not a thing anymore.
Right,
That's not what we do. And yes, we still have calls where people are like, can I come see the babies in the nursery? And it's like, no, that's
Not how it works.
Right. This is not what we're doing anymore.
The first time I got that phone call from someone, I was like, wait, what are you asking me?
Or even some like come to the agency. And that's
Sure.
just where we do a lot of explanation. Like, look, there's a process. You have to become vetted. And then can you kind of have that opportunity to be placed with a child? And they have to do a lot of work before. And, I think that also goes a lot in what we as an agency can tell birth parents when we're working with them. It's like, look at all that we're doing to make sure your child is going into a good home, that they will be raised by wonderful people who want to be parents and just couldn't do that naturally, which I also think is something that not a lot of people understand when it comes to adoption as well.
Yeah, yeah. And going off of that, you touched on like fertility and adoption and couples or individuals kind of coming to the decision to adopt. And I think we do a lot of education on, adoption is just as much of an emotional roller coaster as fertility or just trying to conceive and have a biological child. And in no way, shape, or form should adoption be looked at as like, this will fix all the feelings of loss that I have, because it certainly will not. That is a huge question we ask to make sure couples have kind of processed the loss of not having a child biologically and are ready to adopt, and that they also truly understand adoption in and of itself for everybody comes with loss, for the birth parents, for the adoptive parents, for the child. Loss is really kind of the foundation of adoption, and that's not to sound negative, but it truly is the reality, and people need to be aware of that and accepting of that. I think at Hopeful Beginnings we're really good about being realistic and having realistic conversations and talking to both sides, the birth parents and the adoptive parents, that adoption is a great way to build a family. It's a great option when you're faced with an unplanned pregnancy, but it's hard. We're not going to sugarcoat that this is an easy option.
Right. And it doesn't happen overnight. I think that's the other thing is everyone thinks, I'm gonna do the home study, I'm gonna become a waiting family, I'm gonna make the book, I'm gonna do all the things, and in a month we're gonna take home a baby. And it's like that is not always the way it happens. Yes, does that happen? Sure.
Right.
But for the most part, that is just not the case. There are a lot of families that are waiting a year, 2 years. It really just depends.
Yeah, something that I've also learned, or I find just so incredible, and I know, Julia, you've shared this too, is when it's the right fit for birth family and baby and adoptive family, it just flows together. It just fits. It's not forced.
Right.
And at first, those first couple of placements where I was ED, it felt like a coincidence. And then I realized, no, this is how it works. This is a thing.
Right.
Yeah.
Because it is an incredible, complex journey.
Right. And like you said, it really is about joining two very different families, likely complete strangers. It's really joining together for the best interests of this little baby, which truly needs to be like always kept in the forefront.
Yeah, absolutely. So that stage being set, can you guys tell us about whether it's a family or a birth parent or a child, the most impactful situation that you've had as a social worker over the years in our adoption program?
It's a hard question.
It's a hard question.
It's a lot of cases, a lot of families.
There's a lot of babies that, we've had some incredible impact on every family that's placed, right? It's changed forever. But, I used to teach school, and everybody knows there's always a favorite student that sticks out,
Sure, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I can go first. Just in general, this story is really impactful because it was one of like the first adoptions I was really involved with. So I think that will like forever stick with me. And it just really, I got to witness like the evolution of open adoption, which we haven't really touched on yet, but is also very important at Hopeful Beginnings. And we're huge advocates about open adoption, meaning the biological family and the adoptive family connect and maintain a relationship, whether we are helping to facilitate that or we do it twice and then they go on to meet.
They get
at
over the awkward dating stage, right?
They go out to dinner, they get together for birthdays and holidays. I mean, we've really seen a very wide spectrum of that. But this particular family, I just saw a mom, a woman, a mom struggling with her decision, did not ultimately feel ready to parent, educated herself, turned to wanting to consider adoption, got connected with our agency, got counseling, really felt like she, again, was not in the place to raise her children because she was pregnant with multiples. And, got the opportunity to view profile books, pick a family, again, start kind of this awkward dating, getting to know this couple. And just in 11 years, I got to see that family really bond and, the children have sleepovers with the birth mom. They've gone on vacation together, and the adoptive parents truly look at her and her family as part of their family. Now, did that take time? Of course. Proper boundaries are so important. But when adoptive parents kind of let their guard down and understand, like, this birth mother, birth parents, birth family, are not here to cause disruptions or drama or, anything.
Or co-parent, right?
Or
Take the baby away.
Yeah, like we, can see on like Lifetime movies that portray adoption in a very crazy way. I just, again, saw these two completely different families like really form, and it was beautiful. And have they had bumps over throughout the years and not agree on things or get along, of course, but that is how all families are, I think.
Absolutely.
No family is going to agree on everything. The birth mother understands she's not the parent. She will forever be the birth mother. But the family she chose to raise her children make the day-to-day decisions on education and doctors and what sports they're going to be in and discipline and all of that. So again, just, that case, all the family members involved, will just always hold a really special place in my heart.
Oh, thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
And what about you, Julia?
Like Allyson, the one that stood out to me was also the first birth parent I've ever worked with. I worked with her, and it was a very, pretty last-minute situation. But what is standing out in my head is 2 years later, actually not even, maybe 10 months later, she called us again, and she was delivering again, this time to twins, and she was still not ready to parent. And I think it meant a lot that she called us again, because that is just reassuring to me that she felt supported that first time. She felt advocated for. And that's always my goal when working with birth parents and adoptive families. But when she called again, kind of jumped into gear, went to the hospital, and being able to call that same adoptive family that adopted her first child and kind of see, now they weren't thinking about adopting again, but, they still answer my phone calls, so it's okay.
They still like you.
Yeah, but they said, how can we not keep the siblings together? And, I just hold so much to that situation, because that is something that not everyone may have had the same opportunity to do. And the fact that this family was able to take not one but two more babies to love and care for, and now these three siblings are growing together and thriving and loving each other, it's just so, so special.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the ideal, right? Because like you guys have said a couple times now, it's forming that large family for the good of the children that are then growing and knowing their identity.
Right.
Which is so beautiful.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And knowing their birth parents and that they were loved and this decision was not easy, and we always say, like, who better to answer those questions that children who will grow into teenagers and then adults, like, who better to answer those questions than their biological family members, their birth parents, their birth grandparents. That's another reason why we really advocate and promote open adoption, being what's in the best interest of the child. Again, not co-parenting, boundaries need to be in place, but for the best interest of children, like it's just really important to have that relationship.
Yeah, and I really do think it's the work that you both and our social workers at Hopeful Beginnings do from the start of, really having those frank conversations with both birth families and prospective adoptive families that sets the stage for such healthy relationships. Yeah. I have a lot of favorites, and I'm contradicting myself, right? But I really think one of the birth moms that stands out the most to me, I did get the opportunity to drive her to a doctor's appointment, and we learned her favorite pregnancy snack. Strawberries and Oreos are amazing, guys. We all learned that. But, she didn't have that picture perfect meeting start with a prospective adoptive family, but they still have such a beautiful relationship because of the support that you two as social workers were able to give and help them get over those bumps in a healthy way, that they are able to have this beautiful relationship now for the sake of that child, and they'll have for the rest of their lives, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So I know we could tell stories all day, but one of the last topics I really wanted to make sure that we talked about today was, and not to get political, but a lot of what we hear and see is really this binary narrative, right? You have an unplanned pregnancy and it should be, yes, all supports to parenting. Everybody needs to parenting. God gave you baby. You can do this. Or it is that narrative of, termination and you don't have to do that. And I really feel like there is that space for this third option, and to talk about this third option in a healthy way, knowing it's not for everyone. What is your experience around that? Because we really don't get those calls of clients who are truly considering all three options, I would say. Has that been your experience over the years, or how would you describe, that, I guess, spectrum of choices women should have?
Yeah, I really think, like you said, I really think women, because, that's who we're talking about, but
You're
couples,
birthing
of
people,
course, right,
yeah.
birthing people, women they truly feel like they only have those two options. Right. It's either termination or I am forced to parent. And I think it's a lot of things. I think it is society has really continued to shame women really for when they're faced with an unplanned pregnancy. Right. They're being shamed for any of their options.
Right.
They're put between a rock and a hard place. Yep. They don't win. But I think, just again, the language, we talked about, adoption still feels like a very shameful decision, because it's, for many, still, sadly, it's viewed as you're giving away your baby, you're being selfish, you're, you got pregnant, you should, lie in the bed that you made. I've heard all of these things. I've heard from birth parents over the years say, like, everybody in my life is judging me for this decision. They tell me I should do this or this, but how could I give away my child? So I think that is, and just, again, society and the language, like, it's frustrating to watch when again, women it feels like they can't do anything right. When faced with this decision. And maybe it wasn't even an unplanned pregnancy. Maybe they were just realizing, oh, wow, I don't think I can do this. Or the situation has changed.
Circumstances
and now,
can change really quick in life.
Right. So
I do think by the time they come to our agency, they meaning woman considering adoption, or she's pregnant, she doesn't know what to do. I feel like by the time they come to us, it is truly, should I parent or should I place? I feel like by the time to come to us, either they never did consider adoption or abortion, or they considered it and now are going between these two options. And I think there's a lot to say in that for a lot of people that have different views on pro-life, pro-choice. Like, there's so many emotions, definitely, in today's world. And from an adoption agency perspective, that's what I see. I see, am I going to parent or am I going to place? And those are really the options that we help kind of educate and empower on. Right. Those are, if you're going to come to us with those options, let's start there and see what you would like to do after, the education portion. So, I think that's what I see a lot.
Yeah. I agree. And again, I just feel like if, society as a whole could, lay off the shame a little bit, maybe more women would consider placing for adoption and again, still being connected and having that connection with their child forever, instead of maybe parenting and it not being
being successful,
and other things happening.
Right. And it's not to say, I think, as an adoption agency too, we don't want people to parent, but also I know our social workers do such a good job at looking at what resources communities can give realistically, right? And people's emotional capacity. And it's really hard being, a parent these days. And I really do think if, like you said, we laid off the shame and had these open conversations, and maybe if the media and Lifetime wouldn't do those scary movies, if we could have a happy placement movie once in a while.
Just show the reality. Instead of these extreme...
Correct.
Likely not real cases.
The far and few between. Can't say non-existent, but we don't get 15-year-old birth moms every month. That's just not reality.
Or women who have placed and then show up on the doorstep of the adoptive parents I
saw that movie.
I changed my mind.
Literally that is a Lifetime movie. I'm going to take my baby back. That's not how it works.
And I think we've touched on too, prospective adoptive parents, it's when I get the chance to talk with them, I tell them, this is an incredibly intrusive process, but it's intrusive for a reason. And when my social workers go out to do a home study, they do open every door and they look in the basement because we want this child to be loved and well cared for, as does their birth parents.
And those birth parents are entrusting us to do our due diligence. And with anything else, I want to be honest. If I said that I checked their house, I want to actually check their house.
Absolutely.
Right.
Well, I want to thank you both so much for sharing this conversation today. Is there anything else on your mind, closing remarks that you'd like to leave people with?
I mean,
so much,
how much
right?
more
So
time do I
many.
have? Right. No, I think just, going off of kind of everything we've talked about, I really, and I know I can speak for Julia too, like I'm really proud of the work we do at Hopeful Beginnings in that we truly are a non-judgmental space for again, all sides, women considering whatever they are, you know, in that moment when it comes to maybe an unplanned pregnancy. You know, it's just, we really take pride in being that support that will offer no judgment, you know, to have honest conversations on how beautiful parenting is, but how hard it is at the same time, emotionally and physically and financially and all of it. And then have those same exact conversations about adoption. Yeah. I don't know.
I think
That was random.
no, I think mine is just we never know what someone else is going through. And we should make the standard to treat them with respect and kindness instead of judgment. And if everyone can just do that one time a day, I feel like it would be just a little happier.
Yeah. That's a perfect way to
World
end
would
it.
be a better
Yes.
place. All right.
Kindness every day.
Yeah.
Be kind.
Yeah.
Well, if you'd like to learn more about adoption or adoption mental health services, please contact us at www.hopefulbeginning.org or call us at 847-870-8181. Thank you.
Thank you.